Computers just doing weird things. Okay, so tonight we're talking about vegetable gardening 101. And as I said to the class here in person, I looked over the long one, the one that would take us till 9 o'clock, and there was just too much information in there and it was kind of repetitive. And so I use this one, Vegetable Gardening 101. Like when I go to some seminars and talks and maybe county groups, civic groups, things like that. So this is kind of a shortened version. But in the pictures there, you'll see these are some of my garden sites, and I put in some of our projects that we've done over the years. And so this was actually the Garden of Hope. We used to have it. It was over off of oh gosh, what West Coy Circle, in that area behind Coy Lacey Park or near Coy Lacey Park. So you can see we've got our bags of fertilizer out and there's some lime. So we've been treating the soil. But what we used to do there is we would rent out 12 by 12 plots. We had a master gardener volunteer that had a tractor with a tiller and an auger and things like that on it. So we would have her come in and work up the beds, and then we would fence each plot separately. And then you paid a price and you took care of your plot through the year. And we had them put down a deposit, kind of like this is how you would set up a community garden, or how we did. We had them put down a deposit because we had a lot of people leaving their gardens about July when it got hot. And so somebody had to take care of them, which turned out to be all the volunteers would jump in, or else that garden would just become a weedy mess. That lasted for several years until that property sold. And then we just have not done one like this since then. We have the Kleeman 4-H community garden, which is over by the Kleeman Center, New Providence Middle School. So right next to New Providence Middle School. So we're hoping to get that as a formal Master Gardener project. And I've got a volunteer leader over there that's going to kind of take that on, with my coworker Logan being the lead on that, with me hoping to be in an advisory role. But we have a lot of fun with the community gardens. I do like to work with kids. I don't have any 4-H responsibility in my job, but I do like to work with youth outside and gardening. They kind of kill me in a classroom setting. It's like being the substitute teacher. So, but anyway, like I said, short and sweet, Vegetable Gardening 101. Okay, so this looks like a pretty good garden. Nice straight rows, all tilled in the middle. Rows probably go on for miles and miles and miles. How many of you have gardens that kind of look like that? Huge commercial gardens. Okay, so how about this one? I think maybe somebody had one too many before they went out there with their cedar, because they're going like this and around. So that one's going to be very hard to maintain. You can see that they're still using tillage in between to take care of the weeds, probably using some pesticide sprays and things like that. But their seeds did not come up evenly. The rows are not straight. So this is kind of what we would call a bad example of a garden. You want your rows to be straight. When we talk about smaller home gardens, we think of maybe like a square foot garden, or I would do mine like in 4-foot squares, and just kind of section out things a little bit and rotate your crops every year. And so I'm going to show you some of that. But yeah, this would be a better garden, especially for if you're going to market with your product. These beans would be easy to pick. It'd be easy to take that plow in between the rows, or to hoe, however they're keeping the weeds down. I like to put a mulch. I don't like any bare soil. So with me, there would probably be some kind of a cover crop growing in there. There'd probably be buckwheat, which is my favorite, because it can always be mowed down. It comes back from seed and such. But or else I would put newspaper or cardboard with straw or brown mulch over the top, and just in the rows there. That way you can get in it when it's weedy or muddy, not weedy, and it helps to control the weeds. So this would be more, that one would be more of a perfect garden. So I created a program a while back. It's called Slow You Roll, Plan Before You Plant. And that was because I saw such a need in the community of people planting things in excess, you know, especially like some of our commercial growers or those that wanted to be commercial growers, were planting acres and acres of different crops. And they had no farming experience. They didn't have any background, and really didn't know the requirements of the plants that they were planting. Excuse me. Like everybody hears blueberries are easy, so I'm gonna plant an acre of blueberries. And well, I didn't get my soil tested first. Makes your extension agent cringe because it's hard to correct that, you know, after you've already got the plants in the ground. So it's going to be a fight from here on out to keep that soil in an acidic level. So garden planning, just like anything else, is going to save us time, money, and space. So you want to think about how big of a garden, you know, how big is your family, or are you going to grow some for your family and maybe sell some at a farmer's market stand, you know, sell some extra? Are you going to be preserving those vegetables? Do you want to be able to make it through the winter on your canned products? So allocate your space for your crops ahead of time. Think of how many people you're going to feed and how long. Estimate your seed quantities. You know, that's just kind of a guessing game at times. And I like to buy seeds over and start my own transplants with a lot of plants, because if you go to the garden centers, you can't always find what you want. You know, that goes with flowers and vegetables both. So you have more variety selection if you go online and buy your heirlooms or these, you know, kind of niche type of varieties. So estimate your seed quantities, your size of your garden. We do provide a guide that is in your book when seeding and transplanting time comes, and that talks about when to start your seeds, how to get them ready to transplant out into the garden. We kind of talked about that during herbaceous plants. We really went over that, I think, in pretty good detail. So make sure that you have the right amount of sun or shade that the plant requires. Now, most of our vegetables and our fruits are going to require full sun. So that means 6 hours or more of full sunlight all day. Okay, so 6 or more hours, because if you get into a shaded area and they're not getting the sunlight, the plants are going to stretch kind of toward the sun, which means it's got a hormone imbalance going on, and it's trying to get that those nutrients. So you want to make sure that you have full amount of sun. Some shade in late summer is okay. It might keep your tomatoes growing a little bit longer. Watering is going to be critical. You want to make sure that you have water for your crops. Proper spacing, crop rotation. Make sure that you are rotating your crops by family every year. And that's why it's good to keep a garden journal or notebook or something, so that you know what you planted last year, what did well, what didn't do well, what's, you know, you don't want to plant that next year, or, you know, this variety did really good, so I'm definitely going to plant it. So keep a record of what you're doing, and kind of give you some time to visualize your garden and use that space efficiently. We like to do kind of, I guess you call it brainstorming or just dreaming. And you could always just take magazines, you know, fruit and vegetable seed magazines, lay it out on a poster board, see what plants you'd like, and make, you know, how they would fit within your landscape, what you would like your garden to look like. So it's kind of a storyboard. It's a place to start anyway on how you want to set up your garden. And so as a career option, education of proper planning and record keeping in the garden is a must in cultural management and disease prevention. So you never know. Some of you may decide to go back to school and go for plant sciences or horticulture. You know, there are careers in this area. And I know a lot of people just think cows and corn, but it is more than that. It's very technical these days. Some of the workshops that I go to now, and they talk about the artificial intelligence and the tractors, you know, you just program in what you're going to do and it just drives, and they just have a problem with people falling asleep while they're in the tractor because the tractor does all the work for them. So, you know, but in planning, there are a lot of design programs online that can help you with a landscape design or a garden design. But your book, I believe, has the list of plants, when to plant them, the spacing, and any special notes about that. And if it's not in your handbook, you can go to it at utfort.com. So, and another thing that we've got coming, I ordered them the other day, are the fruit and vegetable calendars. Now, they should be here probably in January, January, February. I really hope they're here in January because that's when the year starts. So those are created by the Master Gardener, what do they call it? Leadership team. They have Master Gardeners from across the state that are on this team that developed this material for us to present. So the calendar, fruit and vegetable calendar, and we will have some turf management calendars coming in too. So I ordered 200 because I ordered 200 I ordered 150 last year and we ran out. So I ordered more this year on the fruit and vegetable calendars. Okay, so location, location, location. 4 critical factors: soil, light, space, water, and I would have to add close to the house. Because if you have to walk by it every day, you look at it and you see the weeds, you see what needs to be harvested, and you're going to stop for a minute and you're going to slow down for a minute and maybe pull some weeds. And for me, that's a real stress reliever after work. You know, we're going, you know, being stuck inside all day. And I know y'all probably have office jobs too, and it just drives me nuts to be inside all the time. So when I go home, I have to walk through that garden. I have to see what's there and what needs to be done. So even if I'm just plucking a couple weeds or picking a couple tomatoes, I've done something that day to maintain my garden. So, but your soil, we want a deep, fertile soil, well drained, medium texture, 6 hours of light, a minimum for good production. Space depends on what you want to grow, how big your family is. Level sites are good. You might want one with a slight slope. If you have a really steep slope, that's gonna need some work. You may have to do some terracing, maybe some raised beds, terraces to adapt to that topography in your area. And you don't want to go for a low spot, just like with our fruit trees, because the cold air settles and you're liable to have more frost damage and freeze damage. So if you get kind of on that southeast or southwest facing site, you're going to have less frost damage than one maybe up on a high hilltop. And water, make sure you're able to provide plants with water, and you can collect it with rain barrels, and it can be municipal water, which a lot of people go with, but make sure that you have a good watering plan. Now, garden planting, I'd just get you some tracing paper and some graph paper and draw out what you want in your gardens. What do you think can go where? Research, you know, companion plants, which ones go together very well. Like we put a lot of herbs around our tomatoes and peppers. So you want to put those together. You can group them by family, so you can move them from family. So this would be your rotation. Maybe you would plant all your Solanaceae, your tomatoes, your eggplant, potatoes, tomatoes, maybe in this bed this year, and then you're going to rotate. You're going to move, trade places the next year. And so if you keep a diagram like that, you'll remember what you did last year. Do what? What'd you say? And write it in pencil. Yes, because you're going to erase and change your mind. That's why the tracing paper for me is. So, yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
No, you're not.
Okay.
Next year, you're trying to maintain that.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I've never seen that tool. I've used it, for you, for y'all, what she's saying was this is an almanac with the Farmer's Almanac Garden Planner online. And so, that is a good program. I tend to read through my almanac, but I don't always follow it. I should really plant by the seasons, as I know that it works well. It's based on history. But sometimes you just get out there and plant when you've got time to plant. So, right.
There's also, farm in Tennessee, I can't remember where it's at, it's called SeedTimeUSA.com.
Hmm.
And they just had, I did their 5-day webinar, but they just had, they just built software for large scale farms
Okay.
and small scale. And it's all software you can, if you're hard in the tap, but it's very user friendly. I haven't done it yet, but,
Okay.
you can put the garden, you can put your seeds, you can put your everything.
Okay, well, send me that link and I'll
Well,
send it out to the rest of the
well.
group. and let them have it. Okay. So as I said earlier, how much to plant? Well, it really depends on your family size. Are you going to be preserving? Do you want to can, make salsa, make spaghetti sauce, or make pickles, green beans, whatever? But remember, you can dry, you can freeze. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. After watching our food safety video on canning green beans, I never can green beans again. They are now blanched and they're frozen and they're put in the freezer because there's just too much likelihood that there will be salmonella in the green beans. And once I found out that my ex-mother-in-law was not even hot bathing her green beans, she would bring them up to us and I hated to do it, but it's just not safe. And when I found out how she was doing hers, because really they should be pressure canned. So, if you ever get a chance, or you're interested in learning, we have a domestic food safety class that you can take online, and you can learn all this nifty stuff about canning and safety in the kitchen and things like that. I'm sorry, I've caught cold.
Is there a cost for that?
I think it used to be like $100 and you can do it at your own pace. But yeah, it's a domestic food safety course. And you'll find it on the UT Extension website. As if you're a farmer or a producer and you're making a product that goes into our kitchen, that's one of our requirements, is that you have to take that food safety course so that you'll know the difference between cleaning and disinfecting and allergens and different things like that in one kitchen, and how to clean it for the next person that comes along. So anyway, you're going to decide how many people you're going to feed. What do you want to put up? Do you have the space to put up a lot of food? And I think that's going to be something that we all need to go back to. Be perfectly honest with you, I would rather have food that I made and had canned and in my cabinets or in my basement, as if there is a food crunch that comes along for one reason or another. We've had a lot of breaks in the food chain since COVID. And I was glad that I had a lot of stuff put up and I had it in a freezer. But you got to think about, Northeast Tennessee and North Carolina, they either got flooded away or the electricity was gone. So if you had everything in the freezer, you lost it. But if you had canned items, you're more than likely able to save those, get in there, and at least get something to eat to hold you over until emergency help can come in. So I might become a prepper after all of this. I need to put more stuff up. I really do, including learning how to do the eggs and lime. I need to do that. Have you ever done that?
I haven't tried it yet.
Haven't tried it yet?
I just researched it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know you can pickle them, but I don't really like pickled eggs. But I guess I'd eat it if I didn't have anything else. Or else I'd have to be out grazing in the woods. Yeah.
That is so weird that you say that, because every single person that I've met have decided they wanted to start like doing like the whole preparation for canning and water glassing the eggs, and
Yeah.
we even started doing it too. Like I have tons of stuff just in storage now, like a storehouse.
Uh-huh.
It's so weird that everyone's talking about that now.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of people that are realizing that we need to be more prepared than we are. We're kind of spoiled. Especially the younger generation, and we need to teach the younger generation, how to grow their own food, how to preserve it and put it up so that they are ready. It's something, my mother didn't do much of but she worked. So I don't know where I got it from. I was told that my grandfather was a truck farmer back in the day, so I think it was just somehow by osmosis, this love of nature. And I mean, I started out with like 2 tomato plants when I started going to school, Springfield, Missouri, and they did really good. So next thing I had a 12 by 12 little garden, and I produced more out of that garden than you would ever believe. Because when one thing got done, I didn't have much room, so it got pulled out and the next thing got planted right there. So we were double cropping right up in the corn and potatoes and everything. So that's I kind of learned, and then it kind of grew and grew as I got older and learned more. So, but these drawings can be very beneficial, record keeping, and crop rotation. Now, I am not the typical gardener. I mean, this does not look like your typical garden. This was one of my favorite gardens. This is when I lived in town, and we had a huge backyard. I mean, I guess it was just a standard lot, but we had a pretty good sized yard. So part of one side went to flowers, and we had chickens on the side. This was fenced in the middle to keep the dogs on the other side. And then the garden was fenced, and we had a coop in the back, and the chickens pretty much ran free all the time. And then at the end of the season, I would pull down all the fencing around the garden and just let the chickens in, and they would eat and they would till everything under. And so I had less mess to clean up. And of course, they fertilized as they went along, but they would love it. They would, like, I'd be out there picking tomatoes and they'd be squawking at me from the other side of the fence. So I'd be tossing. I grew cherry tomatoes just for my chickens, because they'd come out there and be talking to me. We had some cool chickens till the dogs got them. But garden the way you like to garden. And I like to mix things up. I like my perennial or annual flowers in there with my vegetables. I like a lot of different things going on. That's going to attract the pollinators. So that you get good pollination, it looks pretty, and then we would just put wonky stuff. I had, a lot of different types of rocks and pavers and hubcaps, different things like that. And this here would blow in the wind and kind of keep birds away and other pests. But the biggest problem I had there, because we did have a fence, was chipmunks. Yeah, one year, well, 2 stories on this. Is the chipmunk, I had my tomatoes growing on that far fence, and I was digging in there because there was some tomatoes that were within the foliage, and I'm digging in, and it's like a chipmunk. It was definitely a chipmunk moment. This chipmunk came out right in my face, and I screamed, and he screamed, and he ran off to the neighbor's house. And so the next thing I know, my neighbor, and he was Polish, this was a little bit later on in the year, and he said, "Why you keep throwing your corn cobs in my backyard?" I can't do his accent. And I'm like, "Andrew, I'm not." He said, "Well, I keep finding corn cobs in my backyard." Well, it was a squirrel. A squirrel or a chipmunk, one or the other. It was getting my corn cobs, and it was hauling them over there out of sight and out of mind and eating them and leaving the corn cobs in his backyard. So that was kind of funny. I miss those days. And so here are my different pepper plants. This again is one of my gardens. And I use the tomato cages for my pepper plants because these are not big enough to hold up a tomato. Once that plant gets big, it's going to fall over. Now, if you have the little dwarf tomatoes, that work really well. But it helps the peppers to stand up once they become heavy with fruit. And below this is the newspaper, maybe some cardboard. I tended to use cardboard more on the walking spaces, but a pretty thick layer of newspaper, and then we were using straw over that because we could get the straw easily and cheaply from a farmer that we knew. And sometimes we would get old hay. So, and the old hay actually has some nutrients in it, whereas, straw is straw. That's just what's left over after you get the seed off wheat. So- No, it really didn't. And if I would see them, I'd just hit them with I'd pull them out, or I'd hit them with my trowel, or, just kind of pull them out. But I wouldn't worry about the wheat growing. It makes its own cover crop, and you could just knock it over, and then you make your own wheat straw. So that's how we kind of took care of that. So I wasn't really worried about it coming back. But I had a variety of different types of peppers in here, tried to keep them close. They were close, sweet and hot peppers, they were together. And they can be planted close together. And it's just like cucumbers or squash or anything like that. They can cross pollinate, but you're not going to see any effect from that unless you plant the seeds. Then that different characteristic will show up the next year. So if I had a bell pepper and a jalapeno right next to each other, that bell pepper is not going to turn hot just because it's got a jalapeno or other type of hot pepper growing next to it. Now, if I took the seeds from one or the other and I planted them the next year, then I could possibly come up with a new variety and maybe have a sweet hot pepper. You never know, because it all goes back to that DNA. So, but don't worry about them crossing and becoming hot. They won't do it. It's in the next season when you plant that seed that forms. Planting the garden near the house, as I said, makes it more easy to access and easier to care for, water, and protect and to harvest. It may be necessary to fence your gardens to keep out pests such as wildlife, neighbors, children running through your backyard. If you live in a neighborhood and you don't have fences and the kids just kind of run rampant, they might run through your backyard and through your garden and trample things. I had to fence it because of kids coming over, because we were kind of the house for a while when my kids were young, where everybody came and played. And so that's why we ended up with the fenced garden within the backyard. So, but a southeast facing site is going to dry out quicker in the morning, and that will help you to reduce the disease problems. The putting down the mulch is going to reduce the splatter back that you get from rainfall, because we have all kinds of fungi and bacteria just naturally in the ground. And if you have the right circumstances and a susceptible plant, a disease is going to form. So that's why I like to use some type of mulch to keep that back splattering. And that way I'm not out there tilling in between the rows and over tilling my soil. Yes. Mm-hmm. You would need to maybe use that on the pathways and keep it away from the base of the plants, because it can burn, because it's going to be breaking down and putting out nitrogen. So yeah, I would let it over winter. Yeah, if you got a load of fresh mulch chips this time of year, just let them sit, try to turn them as much as you can, and then they should be fine to use the next year. Yeah. But still, be cautious. Just a couple inches on top of that newspaper or cardboard will work well. Okay. Also plant your rows north to south, and that way they receive that full gamut of sunlight every year. Or all day they get the sunlight. And so the quicker you can dry out your garden, the better. And if you have to, with city water, you're paying for sewer. So if you have a larger garden or you planted that orchard, you may want to think about getting a spigot installed that doesn't have a meter on it, or has a separate meter. Yeah, I would have a separate meter on it, to where you're only paying for the water. You're not paying for water and sewage, because that can get kind of expensive. So you can get a separate meter put in and have that close to your garden area. So we have warm season vegetables, and we have cool season vegetables. Our warm season vegetables are best planted after the threat of a spring frost, and that seems to be getting a little bit later every spring. I believe April 25th is always been, well, people used to say April 15th, tax day, was, then you're clear to plant. Not anymore. I grew up in Missouri. I always waited till after May 10th, after Mother's Day, to plant like my tomatoes, peppers, corn. You can plant a little bit earlier, but those warm season plants, they really do not like having cold feet, and they will develop diseases and they'll do poorly. Um, so just kind of hold off, plant your cool season vegetables, have those growing. As I know we all get spring fever, we get garden fever early in the year. So put out all the cool season plants that you want in February and March, but hold off on your tomatoes and peppers and etc. until May. And it has been actually into June, like the last 3 years, that we've gotten things out in the garden. And I know that makes for a late harvest, but if you don't have any protection for them, they're gonna suffer from the cold and the cold soil. But we'll talk a little bit about ways that you can protect your plants. So cool season vegetables, are, you start them, they like a cool area to start the seeds. They can withstand a temperature below 32 degrees, whereas the warm season can't. Like right now, you can still be planting, radishes, greens, mustard greens, collards, seed, things like that. Especially since our weather is so warm right now. It doesn't look like we're ever gonna get a freeze. I know we will. I want some rain. So we need to do a rain dance and a freeze dance here. But cool season vegetables can be planted at this time of the year. Usually about in September, you can start planting those, and you will have to water because it's gonna be dry. But there are 2 seasons. You can plant the cool season vegetables and then just 1 season for your warm season vegetables usually. Unless you have a high tunnel or a low tunnel. Yeah, I know this is really hard to read, but this is an old NOAA weather data. Okay, it's older than 30 years now. I've been using this slide for a while. So Clarksville, our last spring frost, April 27th. So I was close. First fall frost, October 4th. I have not seen it frost here the first week of October, and I don't remember how many years. I do remember one because my coworker Martha Pyle, we used to have a fall festival, and I think about the last time I had a fall festival, it was freezing rain on us, and that was the first. She always did that like the first Friday of October, and so I remember. So at once upon a time, it did freeze during this part of the year, but it's gotten further and further into the fall. So for many reasons, our climate is changing, and these dates are changing. So we just kind of have to use a little common sense and look at what Mother Nature is about to throw at us before we plant our plants outside. If you're saving your seeds, or you just want to check them to see what your germination rate is, usually I would put 10 seeds out on a paper towel, dampen that paper towel, put it in a plastic bag, and then after 1, 2, maybe 3 days, count and see how many have started to germinate. So that'll give you your percentage of seeds that are going to germinate out of that package. So, I mean, I've got a lot of older seeds. They're a couple years old, maybe 3, 5 years old. But most seeds will last for several years if they're stored properly. Except for corn. We talked about that. The corn, if you freeze the corn, it will freeze that germ and it will kill the seed. So you don't want to freeze your corn, but most other seeds you can put in plastic bags, put in mason jars, and just stick them in the freezer and use them the next year. At this time of the year, I take a lot of my seeds. As like I said, I've got tons of them here. I need to bring them out before you all go tonight. But I'll take, all the cool season seeds. I'll put them in a great big bag along with the rest of my cover crop mix, my wheat, my cereal, rye. I'll add the turnips and radishes and kohlrabi and mustards and just put all that together to use up those old packets of seed. And I just put them in a big bag and mix it all together. And then I just go out there like I'm feeding chickens and spread it out and water them in. Of course, soil testing, we've talked about that. Some seeds don't germinate well in paper towels. I mean, we don't really grow peanuts around here. We have, it's kind of hard. Our soil is usually too clayey, too hard to grow peanuts. Now, if you had a raised bed, I think you could do okay with them. Have you grown peanuts? Yeah, in a raised bed. So yeah, the time that I did it, we had the raised beds over at the Brandon Hill Garden, and we grew peanuts one year, and we were able to get a handful to eat. So, it's a lot of work but the groundhogs and the squirrels and everything else like the peanuts too. So once they're ready to harvest, they'll go dig down and they'll get them. So, but you can use trays in moist potting soil and put your seeds on there, same thing as you would on the, excuse me, that's why I don't like to eat before I talk. Excuse me. But you can put those sprouts or put them in a container and let them sprout. And I mean, this would be kind of like microgreens, and you could actually trim those off and put them in your salad or whatever. That's a lesson I'm going to be teaching at the women's conference at TSU. That's coming up November 7th and 8th. If y'all are interested, this should be, I have never done this activity with a class bigger than 25. The lady told me today we've got 150 people. And I'm thinking, no, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this. So I'm thinking of the logistics of how I'm going to set up different workstations around the room, and I've got volunteers. So, because what we do, I want them to have something to take home, and I want them to do hands-on. So we fill up we get the little Chinese food containers. You can buy them at Walmart, and they've got the lid on it. Perfect little greenhouse. So you just put you some potting soil in there, plant you some. You can do lettuce, radishes, broccoli, any type of greens, and then let them sprout, and you just clip them off and put them on your salads or sandwiches or whatever. But those little to-go containers make perfect little greenhouses. So you just mist them, you don't water them real heavy. You just keep them misted, and it only takes about 7 days and you're ready to harvest. And then you can just kind of turn the soil over and plant again, maybe add some fresh soil to it, and do it all over again. So, okay. So soil preparation, we all know how to take a soil test, and you also want to prepare your area. Try to kill all the grass and weeds. If you're going with an in-ground bed, like I said, raised beds are so much easier. You can sit on the edge. You don't have to lean over or sit on, get on your knees and things like that. That hurt these days. So you want to make sure though that you get all the grass and the perennial weeds under control. You can do that chemically or mechanically. Once the grass and the weeds have been killed off, you're ready to till in the organic matter, any other fertilizer or soil amendments recommended by your soil test. Now, if you do this, actually, if you till up your area now in the fall and plant your cover crop, then about 4 weeks before you're ready to start planting your cool season plants, you would just till all that under. When we talked about a manure crop, you would just till that under, or you could crimp it, or you could cut it, and then make your strips where you're going to plant what you want to plant. So I don't like leaving bare soil, and it's good to start preparing a year in advance. Soil management is going to be critical. If you're buying soil, especially for a garden, you want to make sure that you're buying a high quality screened topsoil. Now, some of the nurseries you can buy a mix. They'll mix compost and regular soil, and I think that's really best for the raised beds rather than just going with a media soilless potting mix. So you can just talk with your nursery. Today it was kind of funny because we redid the landscape out here, and I had it pop up on Facebook that in 2013 was the time that we had redone the landscape before. And then, of course, in 2023, all of our plants got killed off by the polar vortex. So it was kind of funny that we were planting on the exact same day as we would have been 2013. Anyway, that project in 2013 started with me ordering from the county a good load of screen topsoil. So what did they bring me? They brought me that.
Oh,
And I said, you scoop it up and put it right back on that truck and take it back to where you found it. And I went to lunch or went to get some plants or something, and there it was when I came back. So they got a nice little note that I did not appreciate that. But the volunteers ended up spreading all that out. We moved it around, and luckily we had a volunteer, I think, with the tractor, and we pulled out rocks and tree trunks and grass and whatever. So that's what the soil is out front here. That's what we've dealt with. So be prepared, go look at their soil before you buy it, especially if you're buying in large quantities. This was probably close to a dump truck load, and so we were stuck. We did the best we could. We amended it, we spread it out, got the rocks out of it. So again, soil test, lime is not always needed. You don't have to study for your soil test, just do it. So whether you choose raised beds, vegetable rows, container plants, they generally require the first time to work that soil to about 6 inches deep, and then you smooth and rake it before you go in to plant.
I do have a question about that.
Oh, yes.
So, I am gonna be doing raised garden beds,
Mhm.
and we got our soil tested and everything, and we added what we need to add. So, we do have 2 composters, but we just got them. Do I just take some dirt from my own yard and some of the compost? Is that how that works?
Did you mix? I'm having trouble hearing you. I may need to turn my computer up. Oops. All right, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Oops. Okay, go ahead and talk again. I didn't hear you.
So do I just take some of my compost and mix it with my soil and then fill up my garden beds?
If you have it mixed with garden soil and media, then you could do a soil test. If it's mainly just media, soilless,
Oh no, I've already done the soil test, but like, do I mix like in order to start the garden bed itself, do I mix regular soil from the ground with my compost?
you can, yes.
Okay, and then does that compost have to compost for about a year before I can use it, or?
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
The compost, can it compost? I mean, should I have to compost it for about a year before I can even use it,
6
or?
months to a year is usually the recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right, thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So this kind of takes years to accomplish. I wish when I moved from town out to my farm that I could have took all this good soil with me, because that's years and years of cover cropping and amending, and that was good thick soil. I mean, it got tilled once and then the rest was done by hand. Yeah, so it was a pretty good sized garden, but I would establish like the paths so that I would not be walking in the soft part of my beds, because you just compact your soil. And it's kind of like having a raised bed, but not having the wood around it. So I'd have sections right there. I could get in from this side, I could get in from that side, and I would just have my trails. And then I would plant flowers, or I put vining crops that would grow up the fence. Tried to make use of every space possible. And like I said, when the broccoli, the cabbage came out, something warm season went in. I would plant more tomatoes, more peppers, things like that. But I would always start out with onions, radishes, beets. You'll see a picture of the beets where I went nuts one year. But in the back, we typically did sunflowers. My corn was planted back there. I wasn't so much into the cover cropping at this time, so we did have a lot of weeds. I hadn't learned that practice yet. So, but the front gardens, I was very meticulous with, you know, my broccoli, you can just barely see it over there. And I think I was getting ready to plant cabbage in here or spinach or something. So was a very good soil. You don't want to work your soil when it's wet or you'll end up with a lot of clumps and crusting to where those seeds can't break through. If you till too much, you're going to end up with crusty, powdery soils also. So your seed and transplants should be planted into moist, fine soil. So I always, I would always water my plants, of course, in the little 6-packs or containers. Make sure that they're well watered before I started, you know, getting ready for them to go out into the beds. Don't plant during the middle of the day in the heat of the day, because those transplants are going to go into shock. Usually if you've grown your own and, you know, you need to take them inside and outside, in and out, you know, for a couple of weeks before you put them out in the full sun and the wind and such like that. So, and also if water can be squeezed from a ball of soil, then it's definitely too wet. I mean, if it clings together, you know, you get that clay feeling, that cell may be a little bit too wet. You want it to, you know, like have good tilth, like we talked about, kind of fall apart in your hands, but have a little dampness to it. I would wet the beds the night before, and that would be helpful just to spray them a little bit. So yeah, I used to be pretty intense. I've given up on all that now. So I went from that to this. This was the farm out in the Fredonia area. And of course, when they built the house, you know, they just kind of scraped off everything and it went down the hill. This was just poor soil back in here anyway. The front part of the property had the best soil in it, and we were able to preserve that. But what I did is I started in cover cropping that and just putting grass seed down. I had turnips, I had buckwheat, I had just all kinds of stuff. I'd just throw out there wildflower seeds, and it looked real pretty by the time that we left. So this is what it looked like a couple of years later. That's the same hill that you see on the side there. And there is some fescue in it, but the fescue did not want to establish well. And so we used rye, like I said, the buckwheat, the mustards and all this. And so we had the chickens, and we put the chickens close to the house, close to the deck there. But this was a movable cage. And so I planted all this in cover crop and we moved her over one notch. And so she ate all that up real quick. And then I planted the garden where she's sitting there now. And then we waited a little while and then we moved her over again. And she ate all that cover crop. And then that's where they ended up staying. And I had a garden. I guess that cage was probably about 12 foot long. So I had a 24 by 24 little garden right there. And it was tough. That was some of the worst soil on the property because they'd done a lot of compacting and heavy equipment, building the basement and putting the sidewalks in and things like that. But the cover crops were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And within about 3 years, this is what my soil was looking like. So letting that stuff just rot down naturally, cutting it, letting the chicken at it. So you can build your own soil. I know Hebron said it takes like 1,000,000 years. I mean, that would be a natural process, but we can encourage this process by adding organic matter, using manure crops, using cover crops, using chickens, livestock, things like that to help improve our soils. And I also did a lot of vegetable gardening, which was basically cover cropping. This is the front of my house before I put the landscape plants in, because again, very poor soil. It rained like crazy in July when we were ready to move into the house and we're supposed to plant grass. And so I ended up, the whole yard was buckwheat, and then up against the house, I put a bunch of good soil, a compost mix, and just started planting lettuces and turnips, and mainly turnips. There were a lot of turnips. We had turnips this big around coming up out of the yard, but it helped to break up that soil. Never could get a good grass to grow out there, so I give up on grass. So I just kept, year after year, I was pushing this bed out a little bit more and adding ornamentals and adding perennials and keeping my vegetables in there. Because again, I had to walk by that every day. We sat on the porch and we looked at it. And so, if have a new area, new construction, just new to you maybe, and you've had to pull plants out, spend a couple of years working with that soil, then go in with your foundation plantings. And make sure that you're not planting, big trees or big shrubs this far from the house. You want to look at the mature height and width and space them accordingly. So I didn't want anything really close to the house because I didn't want to get into the foundation and causing leaks in the basement because we had a finished basement on the house. So there's just another mix. I've got some chives, some onions in there, but I'd also started planting some daylilies and some iris, but we've got peas, we've got lettuce, some spinach, just a mix of cool season vegetables. And what we didn't eat, I would double dig and just just double dig, put it over, then plant a warm season crop right behind it.
Paula,
Yes.
so you're saying like you mixed all that together, planted all that stuff by each other, irises, and then you have vegetables and stuff like that in the same area?
Yes.
And the purpose was to train your soil,
Well, on the annuals, yes, it was because they would die back at the first frost or first killing frost, and those would just get double dug into the soil. And then I had mulch out there, of course, to cover the ground. And this picture that you're seeing right now was a little bit of the cover crop mix. And I would just step on that and kind of pack it down on the ground. And that made the mulch for that area there.
And the purpose of that mulch to mulch that area is to help you have better soil there so you can
Yes.
plant future
Yes.
nice plants and stuff. Even though you had some vegetables there that you would actually eat, huh?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm not one to really eat the mustard greens and the turnip greens and stuff, so I would just work them back in.
Oh, okay.
And if I had to clip them back, I would just let the foliage fall to the ground. I'd clip it up a little bit and just let it fall to the ground and break down and compost itself.
So if someone's building, you said wait till they grade the ground around the house, then dig up 6 inches of soil all around the house to do a soil test?
Well, you need to do your
With
soil
flower
test like
bed.
we recommended. Dig down 6 inches. You don't have to take out 6 inches of soil around the house.
Okay.
You're just taking small subsamples and you're digging 6 inches down.
Oh, in the same spot.
But yeah, in different spots around your garden area.
Around the garden area, not around the whole house. Just where I want to put the garden at. Or flower
Yeah,
bed.
just wherever you're wanting to put the garden is where you're going to pull your soil samples for. If you look
Okay.
back in the book, it kind of gives you
Right.
a diagram of the staggered method.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to recommend.
Okay, and that's for a flower bed or the garden or vegetable
Or
garden.
turf or land, yeah,
Okay.
landscaping. So this was like I said, my cover crop mix. It had some wheat, the cereal rye, the crimson clover was beginning to bloom, the mustards were blooming, and I had a lot of erosion on that end. And so I just let that grow and kind of break down and then planted other vegetables and stuff as the summer went on. I was just always planting something. I had sweet potatoes growing all down this hill at one time, and that really helped to hold things in place. And we got a lot of nice sweet potatoes out of it. And little lettuces. I mean, all this is edible. So, but what you don't eat, you just let die back and give it back to the soil. You gotta feed the soil to feed the plants that feed you. And they're pretty. And there's what was her name? Tanya Clucker. Tanya Clucker. She was the offspring of Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Seriously. I'm not sure. I think she was kind of a mix. One of what's the red ones? Yeah. Rhode Island red, but she had a little bit of black in her tail, so I'm not sure. But yeah, she loved the cover crops and she would try to get what was outside also. But it just made for a pretty garden, you know. Gave her food and built up my soil back there. Is that what? That is your red crimson clover. That is red crimson clover. So, yeah. Really pretty. And then what's coming up there are the winter peas, and pretty soon they'll be blooming purple and all that. So if you let it get, you know, to fruition where it has fruit on it. A lot of people will cut it down before this because it does get very thick and hard to remove or mow. Like I said, at my place I've got now, I planted last year and I waited a little too late. And I was just gonna go with one of the rotary push mowers, you know, non-motorized. It was like, you're not getting through there. So I gotta do it a little bit earlier and maybe miss out on some of the blooms, which makes me sad. But, that was really hard. Okay, this again is the front yard or the front landscape. You can see starting incorporating, that's actually a boxwood, that is one of those false cypress, the mop heads, it's kind of chartreuse colored. Well, later on there were barberries, so I had the green, the bright yellow, and then the purple. But you can see there's some peas blooming there. I strung up the peas to where when we would sit out on the front porch, the peas were like right in front of us, and we just kind of look through and pick the peas while we whatever. So there's different ways to make gardening a little easier. And I was trying to make a pattern here, but my beets didn't come up because I wanted the red and green in there. So that's what I was trying for. And I'm sorry that picture is so blurry, but you can kind of get an idea of what I was doing. So little by little, you can see purple back there, that's purple oxalis. So little by little, I was incorporating my perennials in with the vegetables, the annual plants. Nope. Nope. They would not come up because again, we had the dog and she was on the electronic thing and she knew her circle and she would keep her circle. Everybody well, other dogs would come in, but she knew she would get zapped if she went too far. But this is another view of that end of the house. Like I said, that's where the cover crops are growing. This is going to the back, looking to the driveway. Had a retaining wall there. In that July, that first July, all that rain came and all my soil washed down the hill up into the woods. So in order to kind of keep that, like I said, I planted the cover crops, the lots of stuff, sweet potatoes, and then started going back in. We've got pianos growing, and then I did a couple different types of roses, and I had swamp milkweed and butterfly weed and stuff like that. By the time about 2020 came along, it was really good. You know, it's only got a little grass to grow. So, that's the cover crop, which you've seen in the other. Yeah, that's wheat and cereal rye. Yeah. So I just left them there until they started to go to seed, and I just went over and I stepped on them and just kind of laid them down and then planted more things up in there. So they provided the weed control without having to buy straw, you know, and they broke down and added nutrients to the soil. So, again, that's just another view of the front of the gardens. You can see where I've left the leaves of what I've harvested. There was probably radishes in there maybe. And when I cut the leaves off the radishes, I just dropped them to the ground. Just cut and go, let them drop, let them break down. Even in, this is supposed to be a ornamental bed. But again, the soil was terrible there. The master gardeners bought me that tree. This was about 2017. The Master Gardeners bought me that little tree in 2016 when my mother passed away, so I made a bed. This was all planted for my mother, and it had some barberry, it had the Japanese maple in the middle, but I still did my cover crops for a little while. And then we incorporated iris, and I tried some carnation. Yeah, I was trying to put out like her favorite flowers in there. We had butterfly bush in the back. But again, all of that, was just broken down and laid down so it would build the soil structure. So you can do that in your ornamental beds as well. And eventually you're going to quit doing the annuals, once you get your soil right and put your perennial, your woody trees and plants and other plants that you want to put in there. But I had some, what is it, Crocosmia, Lucifer, they had the red, and then they had purple, irises, a lot of different colored irises. There's a bunch in there. Barberry has fallen from grace. Yeah. It is not a native plant. It is a beautiful plant. But it has been found to escape in nature. It does get a berry on it early in the spring. You can barely see the flower and then the berry, but like some of our other invasive plants, the birds can take it and plant the seeds in different areas, so you'll see it coming up where you don't want it. Yeah, and a lot of people don't like it because it has the prickly leaves. I like it. I mean, that's what goes under the windows. That's a safety thing. It's kind of like barberry. Yeah, it's not a good one to fall on. So, but yeah, that was a neat little garden, and we had trees planted out in the yards too. But eventually, by using these practices and working your soil up rather than just jumping in, have some patience and work on that soil before you go put in your permanent plants in, and then those permanent plants end up dying. You don't want to pay $200 for a tree, put it in the clay soil, and boom, it dies on you, and it's not guaranteed. And so this, like I said, just some easy ways to amend your soil, as well as having something pretty to look at while you're waiting for it to plant your permanent plants. Okay, raised beds and containers. Perfect solution if you've got a small area, maybe you live in an apartment, you just have a deck or something like that. You can use containers. The raised beds just make life easier. I like using different colors of containers, different sizes. You can mix those up and be seasonal with them. Like right now, you can have your pansies and your ornamental cabbage and things like that. And then maybe going closer into December, I've seen a lot of people who will plant like the little Alberta spruce, put those in the containers and, maybe put some kind of different berries and things around to decorate for the Thanksgiving, Christmas type season. So containers, you can be very versatile, allows you to change them out as much as you want. So, okay. And there's one. This is the citronella, the mosquito plant. It didn't ever seem to work until I made a tincture out of it. I took the leaves, put them in a jar, and I know you use hard alcohol. I know there's got to be something else you can use in a tincture if you can't drink alcohol.
Vegetable glycerin.
Glycerin. Okay. Okay. Because I'd hate to tell anybody that's got a problem with alcoholism to make a tincture out of this, because they're going instead of let me add this instead of spraying the bugs with it. So, but it does, if you make a tincture out of it, it makes a good little spray. Witch hazel. Okay. Okay. So there is other alternatives besides putting it in, a hard alcohol. 100% something. But again, it just adds to the characteristics of the landscape. Look at that truck. Here. Going down memory lane here. Okay, raised beds. This picture was taken at the Memphis Botanical Garden. I always got a lot of ideas every time I go visit the botanical garden, but this was the children's garden. And so they had a lot of different examples of ways that you could set up a raised bed garden. I like mine to be a little bit higher. That way you have more space for the roots to grow. You don't have to water as often. And you don't have to lean over so far. So these are kind of low in my mind. I would probably stack them 1 or 2 higher. But usually they're 4x4 or 4x8. You can make them to fit your landscape. But you should be able to reach in from either side and never have to walk in this bed. And you can put a soil plus media mix in there. Just sometimes it takes a little while to get all that right. But you do have to fertilize. They do have to be watered a little bit often and keep them filled with growing plants. Even in the wintertime, put out turnips or turnip greens, something like that, that will hold the soil in place and allow control of your weeds. Just don't plant wheat. I think I told you that one. We learned that at the Kleeman Garden. It was very, very, very hard to get out of the beds in the spring. So something that can be easily removed. So you remove that cover crop, and then you plant your vegetables in a timely manner like we talked about. So selecting your varieties, you should do a little research. The university does research, and that's how we get our recommended species, or recommended varieties for you. So you want to get plants that have a certain level of disease resistance. Look at the growth habit of the plant. Will it fit the garden space? Don't plant your corn like this and then have your other vegetables behind it, because your corn's going to grow tall and shade these out. You could do it the opposite way, kind of make a wall. I know, common sense. And it's also your taste and your preference. As you've seen in mine, I have a whole different way of gardening than other people do. Purchase seed from a reputable supplier, store them properly to ensure maximum productivity, germination. Seed can be collected from certain crops at the end of the season. Crops that are hybrids mean that the seed was produced from a cross, 2 specific parents to produce that seed. So that seed is either going to be sterile, or it's not going to be the same seed that or same plant that you grew, because it's cross-pollinated with something. And so. And we have two main methods of planting vegetable crops. You can directly seed into a well-prepared soil, purchase or grow plants that are growing for transplants. You want to make sure, if you're at the garden center, check over those vegetables, make sure they're healthy, that they don't have diseases and insects in them. So some plants, seed, like corn, prefers direct seeding rather than you starting it first and putting it in. Now, I have gone to the garden centers over the last few years and found corn sprouts about this big. I've never tried them after they've been germinated, so I don't know how well it would work. Has anybody tried that? Have you bought sprouts? Did they do good?
Depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, and I got like decorative corn and edible corn.
Oh,
near each
and
other.
they will
They're
cross.
all decorative corn now.
Yes,
So my
yes.
plants were huge and beautiful and had great root systems. So I mean,
Yeah.
it can.
Okay, but yeah, I meant to mention that before. Your corn is another one that will cross-pollinate, and it will show up in that cob that same year. So if you have ornamental corn next to your sweet corn, you're gonna get some funky colors coming in. Or that, what do they call it? It's not rainbow, it's glass gem. Glass gem is a beautiful, you can eat it. It's like popcorn. You can make popcorn out of it. But if you have it next to your sweet corn, it's going to cross-pollinate. So most common plants to be transplanted are tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, and Brussels. your root crops, cucumbers, muskmelon, you can do either way. You can start them inside and kind of get a jump on the season. It seems like every time I plant from seed, we get a hard rain. It wash everything away, especially my beets. And so once I finally figured out, and Hebron's the one that taught me this, so I let him grow my beets for me. He would use one of those foam tobacco trays and start the seeds in there. And so I would have like 100 plants per tray, but I could put them out at the spacing that I wanted, because my idea of a good beet is about 2 inches round. You know, I don't want them to get much bigger than that. They're easy to can that way. But if I would just put them out, I kind of look like that second picture I showed you at the beginning. It would rain, and then my rows would be going like this, and half of them wouldn't germinate, and they wouldn't be the same size. So I started doing transplants for beets. So kind of trial and error. Beans, peas, corns, radishes, beets, and carrots, they can all be direct seeded. And I'll just mention something that on your carrots, carrots can be planted this time of year to be harvested in June. They actually turn out a lot better if you plant them in the fall, let them grow through the winter, and they'll kick off and grow again early in the spring. So you'll pick them around June. Right now it's time to plant garlic if you haven't already got it out, and along with your daffodils, tulips, your other bulbs, so it's a flower in the spring. You want to put those out now. No, you should put it out now. Yeah, we're kind of on that edge there. It won't hurt to go ahead and put it out now. Just keep it watered. Yeah, just like your cover crops or any other cool season plants you're putting out right now. Just keep them watered.
How
But
about lettuce? I mean,
yeah,
anything.
lettuce. Yeah, you can put lettuce in containers, or you can plant them in the ground.
You see all these photos, perfect, and it's one seed, I'm like, no, I ain't got patience, I end up just throwing.
Oh
it
yeah,
away.
I just throw them out. I usually mix them, like mix them up with other seeds and just plant them all at once and then go out there and pick them. So one year we had, I had a ton of carrots given to me, and I guess Summer, one of my granddaughters, she was probably about 7 or 8. And I was planting the garden, and I look over and she's got like, I don't know how many seed packets opened up, and she's feeding the
Wow.
chickens.
Good for her.
Just like grandma showed her to do.
Yeah.
So we had millions of carrots that next spring, but they had fun. She had fun going out and picking them and stuff. So, and I had a mix. I had like purple carrots and white carrots and orange carrots. So it was fun. So transplants, like I said, it gives you a jump on the season, shortens the time in the field, and of course that reduces the exposure to insect damage and weeds, allows them to be there for earlier marketing, allows growers in northern latitudes to produce longer season crops. Transplanting also provides more of a uniform planting, density, spacing, ground cover, and just keeping that ground surface covered is going to reduce your weed competition, and typically ensures a reliable harvest and predictable harvest dates. So we've already talked about that. But you can't just, basically what this is saying is you can't just throw the plants out there, walk away, and think that they're going to do okay. There's no thing as a no maintenance garden. You're gonna have to get out there, you're gonna have to weed, you're gonna have to water and harvest in a timely manner, or it will just be taken over by weeds and bugs and be a problem. So, and I try to keep the garden small enough to where it doesn't seem like work. I can do a little bit of work on it, maybe every day, every other day after work. If it gets so big that you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, maybe you need to cut back, on what you're doing. Unless, of course, you're a commercial grower, then you don't have that choice. Then you still have to get out there and do it. So, excuse me. So just make sure that you're managing the weeds, providing adequate water, and carrying out that plant maintenance. Here's your plug trays. We looked at that during the herbaceous plants. I like using the small ones to start out and then transplant them into bigger containers and then acclimate them and put them outside. You can also make your own soil mix, and you can buy these soil blocks and make your own blocks of soil. You just make a mix of peat, vermiculite, and perlite, and maybe even add in some regular soil. And you moisten that down, and you have these trays that you pour the soil mixture in, and then you use this little machine, and it just kind of clumps down, and then you get your little planting plugs. And so you plant your seeds right in those plugs. So rather than go out and spend a bunch of money buying peat pots, you can make your own. So just by buying the soil
They
ingredients.
do that as a seed, something like Johnny seeds.
Hmm.
They use some of
Do they?
that the starters.
Hmm. Yep. So, as I said, you can mix your own peat, sand, easy on the sand around here. Compost works better, on our clay soil, but perlite, vermiculite, you can use coconut coir, shredded bark, just things that are broken down, just a good media. You can buy, or you can buy it pre-mixed, or you can buy it in bulk if you're doing a lot. Buy it in bulk and make your own. High tunnels and low tunnels. This up above, of course, would be considered your high tunnel. And those can be of various sizes. I think a 24 by 30 or 48 is your typical commercial size. I mean, you can get them smaller for a smaller home garden. But you can really extend and start your season, if you extend your season further into the fall, and you can start planting earlier because it stays warm inside there. You're actually planting in the soil. You're amending the soil. Now, this one here, has a lot of clay soil. I think I'd be throwing in some amendments on that to make it a little bit easier to handle. But the sides roll up and down, and on the ends, they have doors, and that's how you control your heat. So a high tunnel is basically an unheated greenhouse. You're using the natural heat from the sun, and you're also using the heat from the compost, the soil. Because it can be 20 degrees outside, and it'll still be 60 degrees in here. You know, it'd be warm enough so that it doesn't kill your crop. So as you can see, these are, he's still got some onions growing there, but he's got his tomatoes started right over here. I forget what was under this. This would be called a low tunnel. And you see a lot of home gardeners using this in an outside setting. Now this helps protect from the cold, the freezes. It also helps to protect from insects too. But you don't want to leave it on long. You have to pull it up and open it up and allow pollinators. You know, if it's a flowering, fruiting plant, you will have to pull that up and allow the pollinators to come in. And just like greenhouses, if you need to, you can order bumblebees or mason orchard bees, different types of pollinators, and just put them in the high tunnel with them and close it. And that way you'll have your pollinators in there with them. But it does open, and most of, you know, you have to open and close them to adjust that temperature. So. What's that? That's probably a crop that's very susceptible to a certain type of insect, I would say. So they probably got it covered up while that insect, they're monitoring for insects. They probably got traps set out, just like you would in a greenhouse. And maybe there's a certain pest that's out right at that moment that's going to be after that crop. So you would cover it up, protect it, wait until the pest is gone, or you treat for the pest and get rid of it.
What's the first, like, double insulation?
Yeah. Yes. But with our temperatures, you could just almost grow year round in a high tunnel. Now, the light is going to be an inhibiting factor for tomatoes and peppers and things like that. They need more light, more sunlight than what's provided because our days get shorter. If you wanted to go to a heated greenhouse situation and provide the lights, you know, all that gets more expensive and a little bit more complicated. So. Yes, you can go to your local USDA office and you can apply for a high tunnel or a greenhouse. And they will come out and they will talk to you and see if you're eligible, and they won't help you build it, but there's a good group of Amish folks over in Fairview, Kentucky that will know.
Well,
Mm.
they're booked out.
They're booked out because they're probably the best that we have around. So, yeah. Oh. Oh, oh, wow. Goodness. Okay. So you got, yeah, scenic acres, yeah. So did you guys just go ahead and put up your own or?
No, it's supposed to come back like 2 weeks ago, so
No.
any day now.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys sit on an Indian mound or something? It's an archaeological site?
Because it's
Everywhere,
federal
isn't it?
money, they
Yeah.
have to,
Ah,
they
okay,
have to
yeah,
release them.
that's true.
So, and everybody, like they have 60 days to come back and say yes.
Okay, yeah, 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 there are. Mhm. Exactly, yeah. USDA, NRCS, they're located at 25 Jefferson Street. And they cover Montgomery and Cheatham and I think Stewart counties. And so if you go down there and see them, they will tell you about what kind of programs they have, what you're eligible for, and help you make some farm plans. And this is outdoors. This would just be, like growing your tomatoes or watermelon, whatever. I guess he's actually keeping this for weed control in between rows, because his irrigation lines are really deep. And almost like kale. Trying to think of which farm this was. But yeah, I think he's using that to kill the weeds in between, and this is the productive crop. But you can use, the plastic mini weed barrier fabric, go under it with your irrigation hose, all the way down to the row. And then you're just gonna be, poking holes in it and planting your plants with profit. And, so a lot of people do that, plastic strawberries, cut flowers, things of that nature. So you just have to cut holes or use a piece of machinery that builds up the mound, lays the plastic in the hose, and then you go back and you have a planter that waters them, and you have 2 people sticking plants in really fast and hoping the tractor driver is not driving real fast. So. Okay, so, yeah, this was a farm. I believe this is Sweeter Days Farm. I've been to so many farms on these pictures get confusing. But I believe this is Sweeter Days Farm, and they have a good cover crop system that they use, and they are all organic. So they use high tunnels, low tunnels, and cover crops, and grow both indoors and outdoors. Nutrient deficiencies, you really got to watch that when you're using a soilless media. Sometimes you have to do a tissue or foliar, a leaf analysis. We can do a tissue analysis, and it will tell you exactly what nutrient is lacking in that plant. So that kind of goes along with the soil test. But a foliar test can be more accurate, and they can give you something to put on there real quick. So you can always do a foliar feed, maybe with a iron chelate or something like that, or nitrogen, something like that. So uniform chlorosis, nitrogen, well, this is a nitrogen deficiency. Of course, this what they're showing here is a brand new plant. I mean, it doesn't have anything but the nutrients that are in that soil media. So if you start fertilizing that plant a little bit lightly once a week, it'll perk up, because there's your 2 cotyledons, and that's really your true leaf that is coming out on there. So the seed has provided all the food that it can, it's used it up, and so now it's counting on nutrients in the soil and nutrients from sunlight. Potassium deficiency can be kind of hard. This looks like freeze damage to me. If I were to go out and look at it, depending on what time of year, I would think freeze damage or scorch, one or the other. I would not automatically think potassium. So again, that's why we like to send stuff into the lab and get tissue samples done and such like that, and check for disease. Some of your, well, these are not just greenhouse pests. You will see more pressure with white flies and thrips in a greenhouse. So they have monitoring, they have, traps that you monitor, like sticky traps that you put out for certain insects, and then you can monitor how many you're catching on that trap, and then you can choose your spray control or whatever you're using for control. Aphids are going to be a problem inside and out. Let's see, shore flies, fungus gnats, spider mites. They will all affect indoor and outdoor plants. Aphids, there are winged aphids. That's how they move from plant to plant. But normally they can be very different colors. Usually they're more white or green, but they can be this dark brown color too. So you usually, well, actually, those are mummies, is what it says. So you just need to make sure that you're looking on top of the leaf and on the underside of the leaf, checking in the crooks of the leaves and the trunk and things like that. To look for insects. White flies, they can be a problem inside, outside. Sweet potato, silver white flies. Two-spotted spider mites causes a lot of problems, especially when it gets hot. And they can get on your tomatoes and beans, they get on strawberries, they can get on your ornamental plants. Okay, I think that's about the end of it. That's the other end of my old garden. And this, I hate it that it doesn't show up really well, but that little blue flower, that's a lettuce that I let bolt. Once it gets hot, it bolts.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that lettuce got a really pretty blue flower on it. So it was right there next to the other flowering plants. So like I said, don't be afraid to intermix. And of course, we have a good critter there in the garden. Can anybody spot the critter?
Yeah.
Praying mantis. And the other critter behind it. Okay, that's just another view of the garden. Like I said, don't be afraid to mix it up. Put some chairs out there so you can sit, walk through the garden every day. There's another one of the corn and the sunflowers. And we also had a trap set up because we had a groundhog. Oh, this is my beets. I was wondering when this one was going to come up. Okay, I got really ambitious one year. And I ended up planting like 250 beet plants. I forget how many beets that I canned, but I canned and I canned and I canned. And I gave a lot of them away. I wanted to sell them, but I couldn't because they're an acidified product, and you have to send so many jars up to the university to get tested before they'll give you approval. So I worked very hard on those beets, and I was not willing to part with 3 jars. So I gave them to family and friends. So I got a brother in particular back in Missouri that loves pickled beets. So anyway, that was quite the chore that year. There's the broccoli. I had to put an extra fencing in there because we had a rabbit or something that was going through the garden and the kids running through it. And then that would be it. Yes.
What you were talking about. The class we were discussing earlier about the Kansas State,
Mm-hmm.
did that discuss like any of those laws?
Yes.
It does.
Yes. Yes. The domestic food safety course will. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is?
She's talking about cotton laws.
Oh, yeah. It's called the Freedom Food Act now. Yes. Most things, jams, jellies, breads, stuff like that, you can make in your own kitchen and sell. Anything that you add acid to, like cucumbers, making pickles, you add vinegar, chow chow, salsa, things of that nature have to be made in an approved commercial kitchen. Now, our kitchen is not licensed to do acidified foods. We did have it licensed, but then we didn't have anybody using it for that purpose, and it was an expense that we couldn't afford. So we dropped that. And so now it's just a basically domestic kitchen. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody on Zoom have any questions? Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions in the box there, so we're gonna go ahead and end. Remember, next week, we do not have class. I will be sending out a video for you all to watch. It'll be on landscape design. And then we'll see you on the 12th, which will be our last class.
When do you think?
I will give you the post-test on the last class. And then you'll get the results back in December. You have to give me time to grade and make up your attendance certificates and stuff like that, so. I can send it online if you don't make it to the last class, or I will give it to you here.
Study or, I mean,
No, it's the same test. The pre-test and the post-test is the same thing. Like when you came in and you took that pre-test. Okay, we've already calculated up your scores. Hopefully on your post-test, when you go back through and you answer the questions, your scores will go up. And so then I can say my class increased their knowledge of, by 20% or whatever. So, yeah.
We also.
Yeah, I'll give them,